What's up, you guys? I'm not amazing, I'm just mediocre. Welcome back to the channel and this Apex Legends video. Today we're going to be taking a dive into the story of Bangalore, both examining her history as well as analyzing how she fits into our new season quest for the Broken Ghost, and a bit of insight into how she truly feels about Loba Andrade. But before all that, if you guys are fans of Apex Legends and you want to stay up to date on everything, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you're ready for my next video to drop. And I also want to announce the Meaty Yogurt merchandise store is now carrying Apex Legends themed apparel. I've started with a batch of 4 t-shirts. I have Banglore, Mirage, Caustic, and Pathfinder currently in the store, with the rest of the base legends soon on the way. If you're interested, there's going to be a link down in the description below. But right now, we're here to talk about Bangalore, whose real name is Anita Williams. Born into a military family where she, her parents, and 4 older brothers all served in the IMC forces, which I think is a really interesting note because the IMC were the quote-unquote bad guys of the Titanfall series, and so having one of the bad guys, quote, of their previous game kind of gives them some humanity and reminds you that the ground forces, the grunts that fight these wars, are just regular people who have families and aren't actually concerned with the greater conflict involved. Moving on, Bangalore would go on to graduate at the top of her class from the IMC Academy and would serve with distinction in the IMC forces alongside her brothers. In the months following the battle at Gridiron, the final battle of the Frontier Wars, Anita and her brother Jackson had lost contact with what was left of the IMC and were ambushed by unknown assailants upon arrival in the Outlands. With the squad scattered, only Jackson stayed behind to give his sister time to escape. Alone and with no way home, Anita put her training, extensive weapon knowledge, and competitive spirit to use by competing in the Apex games. Now she fights to raise money for passage back to the IMC home base, where she hopes to reunite with what remains of her family. Now what's interesting is we actually have a transcript of the events from the incident where Anita lost her brother Jackson. They were serving on their ship, the Hestia, that had just come out of an operation with heavy losses. They had to help secure the hull and were patrolling the perimeter. Anita's brother Jackson heard a sound on the outside of the hull and identified it as an explosive device. However, it was too late, and with moments there was an explosion and Jackson was sucked out of the airlock, with Anita left behind inside the ship, and Jackson lost in action. Now, this whole transcript comes from an article in the Outlands Journal, a newspaper covering the events of these planets on the edges of the frontier, and they're actually covering this story in relation to black boxes recovered from IMC ships and trying to figure out what happened at the end of war, because apparently it's a mystery. What, if anything, does Apex Legend Bangalore know about the last days of the Frontier War after the communications blackout of 2715? So that's about 15 to 18 years before the current date in the game. Is she aware no one returned from the final battle at Gridiron? Does she know who won the war? So something happened, something so massive that everyone disappeared, and literally nobody knows who even won the war. So the implication of that alone is kind of astounding. Did some sort of phase shift event happen and both fleets were put into an alternate dimension? Who knows? That's a future discussion. But what we do know is that Anita Bangalore, she believes that her brother is alive. She believes that her brother, a stickler for protocol, who never forgot to put their drop kit on, had that equipped when they were sucked out of the ship. They were in low orbit, so he could have definitely used his drop kit to get to the ground safely. She kind of hopes that he is living a life peacefully away from battle, has hopefully found a family, maybe had some kids, and hopes one day to reunite with her potentially long-lost brother. But in the meantime, with no IMC reinforcements to go back to, and left alone, she had no choice but to put her skills to use in the Apex games. And having poured blood, sweat, and tears into making a name for herself over the last few championships, she is not happy about the sudden arrival of Loba and the way she was shoehorned into the game. So we find this out through the loading screens. The first 3 loading screens of the Battle Pass tell us a story of Bangalore's perspective immediately following the events of the Season 5 launch trailer, wherein Loba had just destroyed Skulltown and sunk the factory that was underneath it. And it appears that Banglore is being interviewed. Looks like she's talking to someone. So the first battle pass is called Mean Girls, and it says, "Do you want my opinion of the FNG? I'm fresh out of those, but you got some facts though." What, you think just because I've only known her a day that I don't know this girl? Trust me, I have 4 brothers. I know this girl. Slinks in through a crack in the wall, talks the two-faced way in and out of anything. Half of her is always in a shadow, no matter how well lit the room is. Gee, was that a lead light, officer? Gosh, the sun was in my eyes. First she blows Revenant to Kingdom Come, then barks orders at us. I did what I had to do. I detained the target, even with my peacekeeper at her head. She says she can explain everything, and I'm sure she can. And then I got Mirage saying, "Go easy on her." Men. If they had half a brain, they'd be considered gifted. So that little line right there gives me the idea that she's talking to a woman. The dropships arrive, the Syndicate rep with a platoon of Spectres on one side, and Hammond's head Legal Eagle with her entourage on the other. Bat those eyelashes at someone who actually cares, because it ain't those men made of metal, it ain't those mercs whose island you just blew up, and it sure as Shinola ain't me. And you think I'm gonna help you up? It'll be a cold day in hell before I ever help up a common criminal like you. Now, I believe I know exactly who these 2 people are. The Hammond legal representative and the Syndicate rep. I believe this is the people we've seen having conversations before. When we had the Season 4 teasers coming and the build-up to Revenant, we had discussions between a Jacob Young Syndicate representative and a Cheryl Amachi, the Legal Eagle over at Hammond. And these 2 people have close communications with each other, and it would make total sense that these would be the 2 people to show up on the scene immediately after that event. Moving on to the next loading screen called Qualified. 2 out of the 3 screens. Reads, "I debriefed the reps on what went down, but Syndicate Boy says it's not necessary and helps the perp up. He calls her Miss Andrade and treats her like royalty. He even apologizes. He apologizes to the lunatic who just blew up his island." Corset's speaking in the mix of a few languages to confuse things, and I asked Octane to translate what he could. He said she's a jewel thief, an underground celebrity. As she attempts to sweet-talk him, she smiles and purrs and touches his arm. The woman from Hammond says Corset's lying. Finally, some much-needed estrogen. She asks her assistant for a file and reads from it. Turns out Eyeshadow's family was murdered, and she wants revenge. This part is true, and you can tell from the fury in her eyes. Eyelashes slams the file shut as Octane translates. She wants to know how Hammond knows this, and they speak in whispers while File Girl keeps looking at me and Octane. Hammond's doing their homework. I wonder why. Hammond addresses us legends, announces Loba Andrade as the newest Apex legend. The hell she is! And I realize I just said that out loud. All eyes are on me now, and you only got one time to chamber a single round, Anita. Get it right. And that right there is actually a reference to something that her brother says. She makes reference to this in her Season 1 Battle Pass. It was something that her brother Jackson always taught her. And in this next loading screen, we see the conclusion, that round that she loaded and fired on her behalf. I respect authority, but I'll be damned if this laced-up pair of thigh highs is rewarded for an act of terrorism. It took our blood, sweat, and tears to get here, and she commits crimes, bats her baby browns, and now she's in the games? I expected this from the Syndicate boy, both of his heads, but woman to woman, I expected more from Hammond. Loba's smirking, and I want to slap it off her face so hard her teeth will land on Talos. Hammond explains that Miss Andrade has a loyal cult following, and watching her exact revenge is gonna be ratings gold. And if I have a problem with that, I'm gonna be free to express that during our matches with Loba as violently as I want to. And I can feel the rage rush into my face as Loba and her grin approach. She says we got off on the wrong foot and maybe the best woman will win. She holds out her well-manicured hand, and if she thinks I'm touching that thing, she's crazier than I thought. I walk away, past Octane, who's been cornered by File Girl. He's saying something about being thirsty, but I don't pay attention until File Girl pulls Loba aside and says her name's Yoko. Her boss knows what Loba's really after, and they can make a deal. That's when I realize the battle may not be over, but the war's just begun. And this is my house, my rules, and my new mission is very clear. Send Loba Andrade back under the rock where she crawled from. So the story that I get from this is that Bangalore is not happy at all with Loba Andrade. And I highly doubt she's actually wanting to play along with Loba's plans. She could be just trying to keep a low profile, not rock the boat too much, because it's already obvious that she doesn't like Loba. But I'd be willing to bet she could very well be the person who penned the Smartypants letter from the prologue, that we got before. This letter had so many references to other legends in it. It was purposefully misleading, purposely trying to make sure you couldn't tell who it was written from. And I think Banglore, who has the smarts to know that you only have sometimes you only have time for one round, and you have to fire it right. Gotta get it right. And I think that was her round that she fired. She went to the meeting so she could get the information, and then when she found out that Revenant is on the bad side of Loba, and that they were trying to keep him away from something, that was her opportunity to shake things up and keep Loba from achieving her goals. But what do you guys think? I would love to know down in the comment section below. What do you think are Bangalore's intentions? Do you think she's actually going to play along with this whole quest for the Broken Ghost? Or do you think she's really on the side of Revenant? Or maybe she's just not on anybody's side and just doesn't want Loba to win. Who knows? I guess we'll find out a little bit more information when we finally get our first season quest hunt tomorrow. I can't wait to share that information with you guys once we get it, so keep an eye out for that. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, hit that notification bell if you haven't already so you can stay up to date on that information and see the video when it gets released. In the meantime, I'm not amazing, I'm just mediocre, and I'm out.